One of the strangest subjects I've ever covered on this channel is the topic of antlered humanoids. I was first introduced to this concept by my friend Mateo Arguello, who runs the YouTube channel Modern Explorer. He got in touch with me and told me a personal story, where he was hiking on the slopes of Pikes Peak, Colorado. That's a mountain in Colorado. At night with his friend Austin. And Austin was kind of lagging behind him, and he says that he heard some rustling in the bushes, and he looked over and he saw a very skinny man, or a gaunt man-shaped object. It was too dark to really see it, and from its head sprouted a pair of antlers. And he freaked out and ran up to Mateo and kind of told him what happened. And Mateo told me that story and gave me permission to publish it. And I decided to call it Wendigo, not because I think that's what Austin saw, but because there's, I think, a misconception. I think it must have been started by Hollywood, that the Wendigo, which is the cannibalistic spirit of Cree and Algonquin legend, is supposed to be a humanoid being with antlers, which is not the case. And I wanted to address that misconception in the video. I think Wendigo is what Austin thought he saw, and Mateo had his own theory that it was a Sasquatch wearing the hide of a deer, the hide of a buck deer with antlers on it. Later on, I looked more into that phenomenon, and I found some parallels in Canadian folklore, Indigenous folklore, and I published a video called The Deerman, which included some Canadian legends which roughly correspond with that sort of phenomenon. Not too long ago, like last year, I published a video on the Caribou Man, which is more Indigenous stories of entities that are supposed to have characteristics of both a man and an antlered animal, like a cervid, like a caribou, deer, moose, those sorts of things. And in the comments of all three of those videos, people from all over the world would start sharing with me elements from their own native folklore. And by native, I'm not talking necessarily about Native American, just like native from their country, about legendary entities that are supposed to be like men with antlers. And a few people had their own strange experiences with creatures exactly like what Austin and Mateo described. And so in this video, I want to share some of these comments with you on world folklore and subscriber encounters with antlered entities. Okay, so the first one's from Smokin' Buddha 2 years ago. Dear Hammerson Peters, thank you for the video. Now the trivia. In Slavic folklore, there is a creature with horns that is similar in look to a New Age Wendigo. It's called Leshy. He is big, got big horns, and he guards the heart of the forest, and you do not want to mess with him. Because if you do, you won't back alive from the forest trip. And this part sounds familiar. Love from Poland. So the Leshy, I think I talked about this in either the last video or the one before it, and of a guardian of the forest of Slavic folklore. Next one's Blunt Smoker 420 2 years ago. I live in Green Mountain Falls, Colorado, which isn't far from Pikes Peak. Me and my ex-wife woke in the middle of the night one night, and both of us seen this shadowy figure shape of this goat/deer creature standing on the outside of our bedroom window. And we both froze in fear because we had no idea what we were seeing. Our 2-year-old and 3-year-old slept in a bed under this window. When I say I could only see the shape and shadow of this thing, I couldn't see it fully because of the outside light. It's casting a shadow across the room onto the wall, with the lights gleaming through the window. We both give exact stories when we tell this. We could somehow feel and see that this thing was looking down right at our children through the window. She told me to get up and grab the kids. I remember saying, expletive you, don't you dare move either. It's going to snatch the kids before I even make it across the room. All I remember is us holding one another tightly and asking if we seen what the others seen, and confirmed that yes, indeed, we both did. What happened next, I don't know. We woke up the next morning, our kids weren't harmed. Neither were we. I've shared this story with many people. This is the first time I've heard someone else's experience close to the same area. Well, the goat definitely adds a spooky element to it because, all the classic images of the devil and demons have goat's horns. So that makes it a little more unsettling than it already is, to me. Next one's Auntie Angie 2112, 3 years ago. I live in the Oregon Coast Range. This past fall, went out for a drive on some nearby timber roads, and both my husband and I felt something follow us home. It was like we could just about see it and hear it, pacing our car off on the tree line. Both of us were oddly silent about it then, but a few days later we fessed us that we both had felt it, and subsequently we had both seen something pacing back and forth on our property below our fruit trees, right below the level of my medicine wheel, which for some reason I felt like I could not pass. It's a sacred place after all. Both of us saw it one day after the other, at about 3 a.m. It was walking on 2 feet, and would have been about 10 feet high, if not for the full rack of antlers which made it about 15 feet tall. It had a humanoid body, very muscular, note not skinny at all, extremely broad across the chest and shoulders. We only saw it silhouetted by moonlight, but it looked to have a head like an elk. Personally, I did not feel as much threatened as I felt as if we were being checked out or vetted to see if we were found wanting. I guess we passed the test, because it left, and we have not seen it since that time. Another terrifying story. Next one's Myriad of Stars Tarot 9287, 2 years ago. Hi, I'm a tremendous fan of your work from Poland. Another Polish commenter. I enjoy listening to the stories you present, especially on autumn evenings in my cottage surrounded by forest. An interesting fact, a creature similar to Wendigo is present in Slavic mythology, known as bees, or bies. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, like bies. It's believed to be a bipedal forest demon with huge antlers. It's possible that a similar cryptid used to live, or still lives, in European forests. I'm curious, I have to look this up. Bes is an evil spirit or demon in Slavic mythology. Under the influence of Christianity, the word often became synonymous with chort, whatever chort is. Another Slavic demon. Very spooky. Next one we have DC Gull 01, 2 years ago. Prefaced with, I'm just a guy with a good memory and an insatiable appetite for cryptid animals. I do not doubt Mateo nor Austin's encounter with the creature. There is an ill-defined cryptid called the knot deer that looks just like a deer that has been deformed/hit by a car, or otherwise malformed, that is down to the bone in various locations. Often the skull is bare of flesh, and the eyes are sunken, burning orbs of angry red. If memory serves, it has cloven hooves, like all other ungulates, but the flesh is almost white and somewhat see-through, so all and any hitches, skin tears, barbed wire encounters are immediately visible as unclosed wounds. Smell varies, but they can communicate to individuals with voices from their past or present. Great story. I always wish that I could nail them into a category, but it's never easy. Thanks again for such entertaining stories and your personal insights. So this reminds me a little bit, and maybe we'll get into stories like this later on, but there's an animal called Thorgir's bull, which is like an undead bull that's supposed to roam Iceland, I think. It's a Scandinavian folktale. And this entity has also been spotted. There's stories about it in New Iceland, which is in Manitoba on the western shores of Lake Winnipeg. It's like a, supposedly, having been created through like sorcery or witchcraft, it's a bull that has all its skin flayed off, kind of dragging behind him, like attached to its tail, and just walks around with glowing blue eyes or something. So that sounds a lot like this knot deer. Or the knot deer sounds a lot like it. If you'd like to watch this video without ads, please consider becoming a member of this channel, and watching the ads-free version instead. You can do this on your phone or desktop by clicking the picture of my face, and then clicking the join button to the right of the subscribe button. For only $2 Canadian per month, or about $1.45 US, you can watch my members-only videos, and get an icon of a little Canadian monster beside your name every time you post a comment on my channel, which will change with the amount of time you've been a member. Since times are tough, I've decided to add a lower membership tier, which will give you access to my members-only videos for only $1 Canadian per month, or about 72 American cents. For my viewers in Madagascar who can't afford this, I apologize. Sorry for the interruption, and enjoy the video. Next comment's Christopher Shimmer, 1843, 2 months ago. I STG this story has a lot of similarities to an encounter I had with a described creature. It was about mid-September 2024, off Rampart Range Road. Full moon, and the sudden and very frightening realization that what I thought were the sound of elk the last 3 nights prior were not in fact elk. A scary sound, even if they are elk, actually. It's kind of a spooky noise. Worst part was my companion left my only form of self-defense on the picnic table, and the not elk was outside my tent flap in between it and myself. And that's the end of the story. The quick edit post-production, I didn't realize at the time of recording that Rampart Range Road is like right next to Pikes Peak and Green Mountain Falls, which is where 2 other sightings of this creature occurred that we covered earlier in this piece. So I just thought it was necessary to point that out. Next one's Arlen Wieska, 5258, 4 years ago. Because here on the northern Ute Res, we have deer people that are kind of like the devil, and when you see it, you get sick and crazy in the mind. And it's like that. I was told not to go hunting by myself. I was warned and also not to pick up any out of place people. If you know what's kind of weird, then just keep going. I was told that to head in gallop in Mexico at night, and I seen an old lady on the road, and just have to go, and when I went by, I said sorry, I was not going to pick up anyone at night, and keep going, feeling that I dodged a bullet and probably was tested. That reminds me so much of a story. I never ever published this in video format, but it's in one of my books. I want to say Mysteries of Canada Volume 4, but I could be wrong. I included it near the end. But I had a commenter who sent me an email. I think this person was from Manitoba, northern Manitoba. But he told me that, in retrospect, he's pretty sure that he was being followed by Cam McLeod and Briar Schmegelsky. I think those are the names. The two kids who back in, maybe 2019, kind of went on this rampage across, like, middle Canada. They killed a few people, torched a few trucks. They went all the way from Port Alberni on Vancouver Island all the way to, like, the muskeg of northern Manitoba, where I think they ended up eating bullets, if you know what I mean. And so this guy, he thought, because in retrospect, to disguise the car they had stolen, one of the vehicles they stole, they painted took some black tape and made kind of racing stripes on it. And this guy remembers this car kind of following him in northern Manitoba, maybe northern Saskatchewan / northern Manitoba. He was going to La Pas, I think, in Manitoba. He remembers this car kind of following him, and it was acting really strange. And he recalls the racing stripes, and this was just around the time that those two boys were up there. And anyway, it ended up passing him for whatever reason. But on that same drive, they start driving through the road in northern Manitoba. I've never been in northern Manitoba, but I've been in kind of the same sort of country, northern Saskatchewan, and it is spooky. Some of those roads through the woods, the boreal forest, very creepy. And this was kind of at twilight in the evening, so extra spooky. And there's a lady. This is in the middle of nowhere. He comes across this lady, an old lady, kind of walking around with a bag full of herbs or something. Like, it sounds like a witch. And she's just walking on the side of the road. And in that part of the country, if somebody's on the road, you're kind of obliged to at least see if they need help, because it's a pretty unforgiving country and there's not a lot of people around. So it's just kind of the etiquette up there. And so he stops for this lady, and she takes an undue interest in his children, and then he notices her eyes go completely black, like her pupils expand across the rest of her eyes. And he's so freaked out about this that he just keeps on driving. One thing I forgot to say was, I think when he came upon this lady, she didn't look like a lady at first. It was kind of like this deformed or like formless black cloud. That's what it looked like. And then he came up, and then he could see it was a woman. So extra weird experience. But that's what this cautioning against picking up weird people out of place on the highway reminds me of. Next one's Gene Grip, 4644, 4 years ago. Many of the indigenous peoples in the U.S. Central Plains and Eastern Woodlands have stories of a deer woman. While seen mainly as a fertility spirit for women, there are also tales of deer women enticing young men into the woods and then trampling them. My husband is Oklahoma Cherokee, and there are also stories of deer men in the northeastern corner of that state. These beings are to be avoided since they are generally up to no good. I have enjoyed your channel immensely since finding it a few months ago. Thank you. I think that's a common thing we'll see in this video. Stories of the deer woman. From kind of, I think it's the Midwestern states. Next one's Richie Stewart, 8431, 3 years ago. I live in West Texas. We had something similar here we called a goat man, but it could have been more deer-like. It was out away from the city, about 10 miles as the crow flies. We had 3 pickups and our dirt bikes at a place known as the Red Arroyo. It's a scrub brush, mesquite trees, and around the lake and river, huge pecan trees at Grape Creek Park. The lake is dried up most of the time. We brought some meat and built a fire, and then we sat around talking about our bikes. Around 2 a.m., we started home on the back road. We were doing about 55 miles per hour when we saw what appeared to be a goat, about 20 feet down in the bar ditch at a steep grade of 6 to 8 feet. My buddy asked, "Did you see that?" That goat stood up, which we thought it was going over the fence or eating something in the tree. Then he said, "It's running beside the truck." We were looking at it with red eyes staring back at us. We were talking on the radio, telling them what we were seeing. They said they couldn't really see it, so we sped up to 60, and it kept up for a bit, and then I put my foot to the floor. The guys behind us started screaming over the radio, and we were now seeing what we saw. One of rolled down the window and started shooting at it. It veered off and went into the trees. We never saw it again, nor did we talk about it. So that kind of reminds me of the story that the other commenter said about the goat man that was looking through the window at his kids. Next one's Mr. Winston A. Bailey, 4 years ago. There is one living in the Chippewa Nature Center in Midland, Michigan. I saw it myself, and it had no antlers, but I thought it was a deer until it walked away on 2 legs. I started to give chase, but then stopped suddenly. More than a little terrified. People always try to tell me it was a guy in a mask, but the head was far too small to have been a mask. So the Chippewa Nature Center in Midland, Michigan, is where a Deerman lives. Next one's Jacob Earhart, 188, 2 years ago. The reason I came across this story, actually, is because my friend had an encounter with a creature that's very similar to this one, in this story. Except for you had a smooth, blurred-like face, which is really creepy. It was around the year 2020, and it happened to be not far from Okanagan. That's in southern British Columbia. It was somewhere around the Wet'n'achie Forest area. There were 5 people present when it was sighted. They all looked at each other to see if they all saw the same thing, and when they looked back, it had vanished. It had to have traveled a significant distance to go out of sight like that, so it had to have been moving at an insane rate of speed. Whatever it was left my friends scared to death to return to that area and refused to go anywhere alone out there. So interesting you see a creature like that in the Okanagan, because the Okanagan Indians have old stories about the Saniapu, which is like a humanoid, a human-like figure with the head of a deer with antlers and the wings of a bat, according to Susan Allison, this old pioneer woman who collected a lot of the stories of the natives in that area. So it's a spooky connection. This is a fairly big comment from Auntie Angie, 2112, 3 years ago. I live in the remote woods of Oregon Coastal Mountain Range. Last winter, while researching the Portlock Hairy Man, I had a dream that I was driving into the timberlands 2 valleys directly south of my home, searching for Bigfoot sign. I exited my vehicle and began walking along the logging road. It was on top of a ridge, overlooking a valley looking north back towards my home. About 50 yards in front of me, a full-grown male leapt over a wall of brambles into the road, and then charged me aggressively. I woke up thinking, well, somebody definitely does not want me going there. But why? What was meant to be protected by this dream? The forest people or me? In the end, I decided to heed the warning and not go there. Back to last fall, I would not stop thinking about the area and the dream. Finally, I decided to go up there with my husband, but to never exit the vehicle under any circumstances. We came around a tight turn in the woods, and it opened up to that ridgeline and valley from my dream. Oh, interesting. I had my husband stop the car at the place where, in my dream, I had exited the car. At that point, I had the distinct feeling of being watched. This is a crazy story. We drove a bit further until we came to another logging road that veered off to the south. I had an extremely strong premonition that whatever drew me out there lived back in that direction. I decided I had seen enough, and that I did not need to go further, so we turned around and started back home. As soon as we began the return trip, I had the very distinct impression that we were being paralleled in the woods by a very, very large bipedal creature. Much later, my husband would relate to me that he had the same feeling on that drive home. For whatever reason, instead of thinking of Bigfoot, I found myself thinking about the Celtic god of the woods, Cernunnos. I could hear noise of movement and occasionally caught a glimpse of the figure. My husband and I were uncharacteristically silent the whole way home, and I did not tell him of my impressions at that time. Over the next 2 weeks, both my husband and I had middle-of-the-night sightings, independently of each other, of a ridiculously tall individual pacing back and forth on the hillside below our house. We both saw a dark, hulking human form, with its head topping about 10 feet, but with a staggering rack of antlers extending another 5 feet, making the creature about 15 feet high in total. What was truly odd about the whole thing is that, one morning about a month after the drive into the timberland, it was as if my husband and I simultaneously woke up from a spell, and we both suddenly started telling each other what we had seen and felt. I had seen the thing in profile, and could report it that it had a jutting snout, blunted on the end, just like an elk. It was not skinny but muscular in the extreme. We both estimated it to be about 15 feet tall, and we both saw it pacing back and forth below our house, between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. My intuition told me it was merely checking us out, that it was not a threat to us, even though it could have been. I felt like we were being evaluated to see if we passed the test, like it was checking to make sure we were also guardians of the forest. It left after a few days, and we have not seen it since. But later this past winter, 2 people who live right next to us were killed in an argument over an $80 debt. They were definitely no friends of the forest. When it happened, the Antlered Man popped into my mind. Dunno, just saying. So this comment, I'm sure, is just an expansion of or an elaboration of a previous comment we just covered. I have to check. Yeah, right, Auntie Angie 3 years ago. So the same comment, but with some more elaboration. Next comment's Kelly Malone, 8171, 1 year ago. In East Texas in 2007, my friend and I saw one. I had never heard of this creature before. It was about 9 feet tall and stocky, huge deer antlers. We were sitting in my car talking around 10 p.m. We both looked at the windshield. It was standing about 30 feet in front of my truck. Shocked, we just frozen for a few moments. Then I started the car and we got out of there. We went a few miles down the road to a friend's house and told them what we saw. They didn't believe us, of course, but it was very scary. It's another Texas story. Next one, Susie Von Q, 5625, 4 years ago. I heard about a creature like this living on Granville Island in Vancouver, and it bothered me so much, I ended up telling my sister like a friend, who happens to be non-status Blackfoot, so I'm kind of confused about the location here, Granville Island in Vancouver. That's like a very popular market, not the sort of place you think some mysterious creature could live. But anyway, let's keep going. She then told me how, when driving the highway between Lethbridge and Medicine Hat, she and her boyfriend had to slow down to allow a large racked deer to cross. They passed slowly as it was almost across the highway, and noticed that it was only walking on its hind legs and was simply hunched over. They didn't speak about it or anything else for the rest of their drive, at which point they both had to ask one another if what they saw was what the other saw too. So Lethbridge and Medicine Hat are in southern Alberta. Lethbridge is in the west, Medicine Hat's in the east, and the highway between them is the number 3, the Crow's Nest Highway. And it's interesting that this sighting happened in Alberta because there's some guy, I don't know who it is, but he made this website dedicated to the Alberta Deerman is what he called it. And it's just like anecdotal stories from people talking about seeing a bipedal deer, usually in central Alberta. But here's a story from southern Alberta. Next one's Michaela, 9678, 4 years ago. I remember I once read of a Native American deerman creature that would hunt the creatures who wasted its prey, so basically illegal trophy hunters, and kill them. From what I remember, it had the head of a deer and the body of a man, muscular but very tall. And the story goes that either a Native American shaman conjured the creature to punish the wasteful settlers, or basically Mother Nature summoned the beast to punish wasteful hunters. Either way, I was like, wow, that's creepy but balanced. The creature never hurt or killed anybody. And in the Native American one, if I remember, the deermen hunted with bow and arrow knife and another weapon. I can't remember if the other version had weapons. I think he used bare hands. I also heard of something like this in Europe. I think the creature is called the Hunt. And it is also huge and blew a horn when it was chasing its prey, like a hunter's horn during fox hunts. It's been over 20 years since I read that. True or not, I love these stories. So this comment is eerily evocative of Auntie Angie's story, of a tall, muscular deer-like creature that is supposed to be like a guardian of the forests. It's like the same story. That's crazy. Very spooky. And this next one's not a YouTube comment. It was on my website, mysteriesofcanada.com, on my article on the Deerman. And she says, I'm in British Columbia, Vancouver, and I have seen a deer-like man without antlers and the body of a human with wings. He was tan in color, and his eyes were so dark. I seen it twice, once flying in the air in the city with a group of seagulls. It was night, and I only noticed it because the wingspan was much bigger than the birds flying with it. It flew over a light that was shining towards the sky, so I seen its whole body. It circled around, going down to land, and the light shone on its body, and that's when I noticed legs and an animal face. It was big. I seen it was landing somewhere nearby, so I ran home scared, trying to piece together what I seen. Then about 2 days later, I seen it again. This time, I was walking down a back alley in the same neighborhood, in this yard. There were semi-truck trailers on braces that held them up without the wheels. That's when I noticed that one semi-trailer looked like the back of it was ripped apart. The trailer had damage, and the braces it sat on was damage. I was thinking to myself as I was looking at it, I wonder what did that. That's when I seen its eyes from under the trailer behind the braces, looking up at me, and when our eyes met, it pulled its head from sight. I got so frightened that I had goosebumps up my back of my neck. I said out loud to it, "Please don't follow me. I'm just going to back away and leave. Don't follow." I got my nerves up and did so, but ran away as fast as I could. I couldn't believe I seen it again. I knew it was the same deer-like animal man I seen flying a couple days before. When I seen those eyes, it put me into some kind of shock, because my mind was trying to process this thing and find a logical answer, but I knew it was that Deerman thing that was flying with the birds. I never seen it since. So, in physical appearance, it sounds just like the Sonia Poo. With it flying around is interesting because I have so many of these winged humanoid stories. I've been meaning to do a video on it for so long, and I just have to find the time to sit down and finish it. But this would probably make it into that category. And so the fact that this lady lives in Vancouver, kind of interesting, considering the comment about the lady saying that in Granville Island, Vancouver, something was like this is supposed to live there. Next one's Rat Girl 34 2 years ago. I used to know a few creepy places up in northern Manitoba. I heard about an island that nobody spends the night on. The guy who told me about it said he and some friends tried once. During the day, it was nice and a tranquil camping spot as you could want. They got their tent set up, made a fire, and were having a good time until the sun started to set. They started hearing this thumping from the other side of the island, like huge footfalls headed towards them. Slowly first, then as it got darker, they got louder and bolder, and they started hearing awful growling sounds. Panicked, they ran back to their boats and got out into the water. They went out as far as they dared to not get lost in the dark, pointed at the shore of the lake away from the island, and then sat and waited to see if whatever had been going for them would show itself. It did. It walked upright, with elk-like antlers, eyes burning like hot coals. And it was still walking towards them. It waded up to its chest into the water, about a quarter of the way to the boat, in deep waters, and then apparently it stared at them a moment, and then turned and did slow laps around the island all night. Apparently they slept in their boat because they knew enough about the area to not want to try finding a place to pull out of the water in the dark if they didn't have to. This thing was supposedly about 9 feet tall, not including the antlers. So another giant humanoid with antlers. And in northern Manitoba, I wonder if this was Devil's Island in northern Manitoba. Sorry, I mean Devil's Island in Lake Winnipeg. Because there's a Devil's Island where weird things are supposed to happen to people there. Like people will have cabins there and be run out by something giant. Next one's Candy for People 3Z Candace Cattlemaa 5 1 year ago. I should have had a dash cam in my van so I could have proof of my story I'm about to tell ya. In 2016, I seen a half-deer, half-man run across the road as I was driving home. It had antlers. Its torso was that of a man. Its legs and arms were hairy. Its feet had hooves, but it had hands like a human. Its face looked human, but ugly-looking. The fur was brown like a deer. Its whole back was hairy except from the front of its torso. To be honest, that scared the crap out of me. I prayed hard for myself and my son. My son was with me, but he was only 2.5 years old. I don't want to ever see that thing again. Ever. Next comment's December Cat 1 year ago. My mother's tribes and quite a few others in the U.S. have a skin changer named Deer Woman. Different version, but the same base. You cannot look her in the eye, or you will die, especially if you're a man. That's who harmed her in life. Deer Woman appears as a very beautiful, young, super sexy native woman, and lures men away from ceremony, and then she quickly turns into her deer form and stomps humans to a bloody pulp. This spirit is after men, especially, and tests the character of men. She often protects pregnant women and old children. So this is the same thing that another person was talking about before. A spirit that will trample men to death. Next one's Hollow Days in the Sun, 6 months ago. My tribe, the Choctaw, have a deer man called Cache Hotopalo. My daughter's friend was riding around on the back roads of Liberty County, Texas with her brother and a friend. A deer man suddenly appeared in the road and began to chase the car they were in for a couple 100 yards. When she told me about it, she honestly thought it was a Wendigo based on the dumb creepypasta that is online. I told her that Wendigo isn't our tradition in the southern U.S., and that they probably saw a Cachehotapalo based on her description. The Cachehotapalo isn't dangerous, but it enjoys scaring hunters and other people out of its territory. Another Texas story. And here's Auntie Angie again, 6 months ago. My husband and I experienced an antlered bipedal cryptid on our property in the Oregon Coast mountain range in 2022. It had the body of a human and the head of an elk, with a massive rack of antlers. We each saw it separately, about a week apart, both in the middle of the night. It was stalking back and forth below the line of our medicine wheel, at the center of our property, which lies on a very steep mountainside. It was completely silhouetted, and so no facial features were visible, and no eyeshine. It appeared to be 12 to 15 feet tall with its antlers, but again we were viewing it on a downhill slope. After we both realized we had seen it, and compared impressions, we both felt that it was frustrated by the medicine wheel, as if it wanted to come up to our house. But the medicine wheel was blocking its approach. Aho! We feel it followed us home a few days prior to our sighting, after we went on a drive through the timber roads that spiderweb across this mountain range. So consistent with her other posts, and emphasizing that she believes the medicine wheel was instrumental in keeping this thing in check. So a medicine wheel is like it's like a big circle of stones. I think it might be two. It looks like a big like wagon wheel. It has like a center and it has spokes coming out. And then it has the outside of it. And this is a thing built by Native Americans, First Nations. And I want to say it's like a Plains people thing. I could be wrong about that, but it's definitely on the Plains at least. And I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this. I don't really know what they're for, but it's some sort of sacred symbol. I think it's for ceremonial purposes. And if you know the kind of the pan-Indigenous movement, they have a symbol of a medicine wheel on it with it's got like red, white, black, and yellow, and that's the symbol they've adopted for this in my opinion, a little bit ridiculous pan-Indigenous movement. I say ridiculous because I don't want to get political or anything, but I mean, there are so many different tribes and nations with different ways of life. It's just like, for me, it's the same thing as like white power or black power. It's like, kind of forgets that different races are actually very diverse in themselves. But I know you guys don't come here for my political or ideological beliefs. So if anybody knows what a medicine wheel is actually for, please let me know in the comments. Next comment's Lucius the Werewolf 5 months ago. There's not deer sightings here in Manitoba. That's it. Next one's HFSK123 5 months ago. I live in Saskatchewan and was told a story about an elk man who used to be a hunter and was now half man and half elk. Next one's Kithen 2050 6 months ago. I once had a nightmare about a herd of bipedal carnivorous moose. That sounds terrifying. If you know how large moose are, then you can understand why a herd of them on their hind legs would be intimidating. Yep, and man-eating ones too, or carnivorous ones. The leader of the herd demanded meat from me. It said meat, with something like the bugle sound that deer make. I ran inside and got all the meat out of our fridge and freezer. When I presented it with the meat, it threw it to the ground in anger and shouted that this meat is no good. We want fresh meat. I woke up in abject terror, thinking I had to find fresh meat. Oh my gosh, what a nightmare. It took me a few minutes to remember that I was in bed with my wife in the middle of Columbus, Ohio, far from the lands where moose roam. I have had nightmares my entire life. Demons, monsters, even the end of the world. And somehow bipedal carnivorous moose are the actual worst, because a regular moose could absolutely wreck me and ruin my life. The idea of deer people is right up there for me now. Well, I think that might be one of the scariest nightmares I've ever heard of. Next one, Zachariah Weisenhunt 6 months ago. I live in Oklahoma, and my grandma used to tell me about the deer woman, and how she would go after bad men that mistreated women, and women who mistreated their children, and the Nalusa Falea, which is a shadow creature in Choctaw mythology, and hides where the light meets the shadow, waiting for his victims to leave the light. So another story about Oklahoma and the Deerman. I think I said Midwest. I think there are stories from the Midwest, but Oklahoma, I think, you wouldn't call it the Midwest. It's like the South, I think. My American geography is lacking, but I think it's in the South, like north of Texas, which is where other stories seem to come from. Now, the Nalusa Falea, that rings a bell. Where did I hear that before? I think someone might have associated it with Black Panthers. I'll have to check my notes. Let me just check my notes quick, see if I have a note on it. Oh, never mind. It says, the late cryptozoologist Mark A. Hall drew a connection between the devil monkey and the Nalusa Falea, or long black being, a shadowy monster of Choctaw Indian legend, said to possess long pointy ears. So this is the late cryptozoologist Mark A. Hall, but he thought the devil monkey might be, or the legend of the devil monkey might be this, Nalusa Falea, or long black being of Choctaw legend. Next comment is Kerry Roberts, but I don't think this is on my YouTube channel, this is on my website. And he says, in Ponca City, Oklahoma, there is a legend of a deer woman. Deer legs, but upper torso of a woman. Anyone living in this area of northern Oklahoma knows the story. I'm 63 years young. and moved to Ponca in 1966, and remember immediately being told Deer Woman stories. Another Oklahoma story. Very cool. And here's the last story by S. Stewart Clow. And this is another website comment. Fascinating. Similar stories are on the sightings of strange creatures in southern Maine in the 1920s and 30s. All right, so if anybody has any of their own experiences they'd like to share on antlered anomalies, please feel free to leave it in the comments below. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. So here's another edit post-production. Just for fun, I wanted to kind of plot these different experiences on the map, and I came across some interesting patterns. So here's a couple from Poland. There was 2 stories from Poland. There's the only ones outside the Americas. So let's go to the Americas. I had erroneously made the assumption that most of these stories were from like the Midwest. I don't know where that idea came from, but I'm wrong about that. I'll show you. So we've got a big cluster here in, like, I guess you'd call it like the south central United States. 3 in Oklahoma, 2 in East Texas, and then 1 in West Texas, Red Arroyo / Grape Creek Park. Up here, it looks like there's only 1 in Colorado, but if you zoom in, there's 2 right next to each other, and then I didn't plot the Pikes Peak, which is right there too. And here's one, the Northern Ute Res. I think when I did the video on it, I did the Southern Ute Res, but I'm too lazy to change it. So this is the Northern Ute Res. So a little cluster in like the American Southeast, a cluster in South Central United States. Then we got a couple in the Pacific Northwest. So Auntie Angie had a bunch of comments from the Oregon Coast Range. I just included that as one plot. Wenatchee National Forest, and 2 in Vancouver, the city. And lastly, we've got in kind of the west central Canadian prairie provinces, although these aren't really in the prairies. Another thing here, and then we have some anomalies, the Chippewa Nature Center, and Maine. So that was kind of interesting. It seems like this is the biggest concentration of these stories, which seems to accord with the old Deer Woman legends. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you.